As promised, we have with us today from New Orleans, Sayre, who is the reporter who wrote the story concerning the lawsuit that's been brought against Factory Mutual. Alan, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Good afternoon to you. I know that we're talking to you the night before the broadcast, so we thank you for joining us. The story is very interesting for a number of reasons. The three that I can think of, and maybe you can give us a little background on it. But first of all, Factory Mutual is a very reputable company in the insurance and reinsurance world. Secondly, there was a claims payout made here already by Lexington Mutual, which is an AIG company, if I'm not mistaken. And thirdly, I think, and this might be a bit of naivete on the part of people in the Northeast, I had no idea that the Port of New Orleans was still in this bad a shape this long after the storm.
Well, the port was hit pretty hard by Katrina. They were closed for a number of weeks, and they actually were one of the first major businesses here to reopen. They've had a lot of problems. For one thing, the Mississippi River Gulf outlet, which brought in deep draft ships around the Mississippi River so they get into the port, is no longer passable to these ships because of Katrina, and the Army Corps of Engineers is now leaning towards, amid a lot of political pressure, closing that permanently. So they've lost a number of businesses that use the upper portion of the port, which is commonly known as the Industrial Canal.
Okay, the Industrial Canal, unless I'm mistaken, that was the site of the primary levee burst, was it not?
Right along there, somewhere along the Mr. Go.
Okay.
And that's what was responsible for all the catastrophic flooding in St. Bernard Parish, which is a major suburb of New Orleans.
Okay. Well, let me ask you specifically. I note that the story indicated that the suit was filed in state court within the 1 year time period that was required so they could at least get standing. Who asked for it to be vacated to the federal court system?
The records aren't really clear on that point. A lot of these suits, though, that have come out from Katrina-related insurance matters have wound up in federal court.
Mm-hmm. And then I did notice from your story, which was very detailed actually, that Lexington has paid what the story indicates is the full extent of their coverage. That's correct to your understanding?
Yes, it is.
And then the other interesting part is that Factory Mutual has at least paid something.
Not enough, according to the board. Let's put it that way.
That's true. Now, again, from my perspective, again, as a Northeasterner who unfortunately perhaps has not been paying as much attention to this as I should be, the big nub of the issue, insofar as it applies to homeowner policies at least, has always been, is the flooding actually covered by the commercial policy, or is it just wind? And is there any of that going on here?
Doesn't appear to be. According to the port, their policy has limits for a combination of $145 million for flood and wind damage. I believe that might be along the lines of $80 million for wind and $65 million for flood. Now, the port does have more insurance than that for something like catastrophic fire, but hurricane coverage like this is extremely limited as far as the upper range of policy is concerned, or the deductible.
Did you get any sense, Alan, as to how long, how many years of renewal the relationship existed between the port and Factory Mutual?
According to the lawsuit, about 20 years.
20 years. 20 years. So this has been a 20-year relationship, presumably through a broker, and with a good premium payment record, probably a couple of claims here and there, and now all of a sudden this is happening. I have to just say, I mean, what are you hearing? I mean, why is this happening? I mean, I know that Factory Mutual didn't comment for the record, but it sure seems to be a curious circumstance.
Well, it follows a pattern that we've seen in southeastern Louisiana and over on the Mississippi coast of Katrina was just a devastating storm, and insurers and their clients getting locked up in these kinds of battles. It goes from a small homeowner, and I think this is the largest such suit I've seen so far along the same lines.
Mm-hmm. If we were to do some digging, would we see that Factory Mutual, you think, has paid out a lot in claims for Katrina throughout the Gulf Coast?
I could not tell you.
Mm-hmm. And one other question I had, I noticed from your article that the port is claiming damages of a total of $175 million, part of which is business interruption and the other part is property. Do you have any information as to what the business interruption amount is they're looking at?
I don't know what supposedly their policy limit is on that. They've described it as have some payments have been made for business interruption, but they do not believe they're adequate.
Mm-hmm. And I guess a final question then that I have is when you spoke locally to the port people, some of the rejoinder that was mentioned in the article from Factory Mutual about inadequate, actually this is part of the lawsuit against Factory Mutual, underpaid claims, falsely claimed that the port has not provided accurate accounting of its damages and generally acted in bad faith. I assume that the port people are saying that they have not acted in bad faith and they have provided an accurate accounting of their damages.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the major cruxes of this lawsuit.
And then again, having read enough John Grisham novels, I know the importance of getting to a jury trial. Is that something that's on the port's mind?
The port has directly requested a jury trial.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you one final question. If this was happening 50 miles north of us, up at the port of Newark, which is a pretty substantial container port, and if it was rendered pretty much down in business because of a storm, the local politicians, the governor, the mayor, people from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey would be up in arms trying to ensure that this claims payment was made to get the business back and going. What's the effect been down there in the local businesses? Are companies leaving town or moving or what?
Well, there has been so far, some companies have left, some businesses have left or not reopened, and this is a problem that stretches all along from here up to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, simply because the coverage is either not available or it's so expensive they can't get it. For instance, if you go over to Biloxi, Mississippi, you will find all the casinos back up again, running full throttle, and the entire coast, except for those casinos who can afford that kind of coverage, is still pretty barren.
Mm-hmm. In your estimation, percentage-wise, regarding the port specifically, what percentage back do you think it is? Would you care to hazard a guess?
I wouldn't want to hazard a guess. I could look something up if you want to stop right now and edit figures.
Well, why don't we just ask the next question?
Okay.
How much in the direct way of port-related business is moving around down there because of a diminution of business?
Like I say, I've got some information, but I have to stop and look it up.
Well, I noticed, for example, in your story, you've got a company here called International Shipbuilding. They moved business out to Mobile, Alabama from the Industrial Canal.
Right.
And
they operated what you call a ferry service for railroad boxcars from Mexico to the Gulf Coast.
Okay, then you've got Southern Scrap Material. They're also going to move some operations. Then Bollinger Shipyards is moving over to Morgan City and Sulphur. So I mean, this is having an economic impact, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And the port itself is having, at the same time all this is going on, is getting more and more competition from, for example, the Port of Houston has been a big competitor for the last 30 years or so. And now the Port of Mobile, Alabama is getting into the game very heavily. And the port's warned that they need more container facilities to be able to adequately compete. So they are being hit on several fronts right now.
And then what's the local the local political response down there? I mean, Louisiana has always been known as having more than effective representation in the U.S. Capitol. I mean, this is something that I would think would be a real clarion call of an issue. Is this a big item down there?
It has not become yet.
Really? Okay.
The overall insurance situation is, but this specifically has not.
Okay. Well, listen, Alan, I thank you for your time, and we'll no doubt, if you don't object, be talking to you again in the future on this one. This is actually a very interesting issue.
Okay, I'd be glad to.
All right, sir. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.